Okay, we're ready. You guys ready? I wanted to start with a quote from Romans chapter 8, verses 22 through whenever I stop. We know that the whole creation has been groaning in travail together until now. And not only creation, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly as we wait for adoption as sons, the redemption of our bodies. For in this hope we are saved. Now hope that is seen is not hope. For who hopes for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we wait for it in patience. So welcome back, and this is the third installment of our Intro to Centering Prayer Workshop. And I thought I would start off with reviewing what we did last time, which was the guidelines. When we sit down to do centering prayer, it's a good idea to find a place that's quiet, where you're not going to be interrupted or disturbed, to try and find a time when you're not going to, when you're going to be alert, and to have a timer that you don't have to fiddle with too much and it's not too jarring. The guidelines are to choose a sacred word as the symbol of your intention to consent to God's presence and action within. So the sacred word is like the wedding ring in an engagement when you're going to get married. The word isn't right or wrong any more than the type of engagement ring that you get is going to make a difference in your wedding ceremony or in your marriage. So the word does not matter. You just choose a word that's going to work for you and you stick with that. Consent is a difficult concept to get. I didn't get it until this last spring. And Uli, when you asked me about it last time, I actually had a chance to think about it a little bit more. Did you get my Facebook thing? And
I didn't understand it.
You didn't understand it? Okay. Well, basically the idea, this consent is an affirmation. It's a positive, active affirmation. So if you think about, if you've ever gotten roped into doing something because you didn't say no, right? Or say they're asking for volunteers and you're all lined up. Whoever was willing to volunteer, please take 2 steps forward. But everybody else in the line takes 2 steps back, and there you are. So this is a consent, is you're actually wanting to do this. It's an affirmation, it's positive. You're saying yes to God rather than not saying no. Does that make it more clear? So anyway, it's a consent to God's presence and action within, and we have to let go of our actions so we can let God work his actions within us. Second, sitting comfortably and with eyes closed, settle briefly and silently introduce the sacred word as the symbol of your consent to God's presence and action within. So we're going into our inner room and we're closing the door. Number 3, when engaged with your thoughts, return ever so gently to the sacred word. This is what we're going to talk about today, so I won't say anything further on it. 4, at the end of the prayer period, remain in silence with eyes closed for a couple of minutes. And we do this so that we can take the silence that we've had and we've enjoyed for the 20 minutes into the rest of our lives. Thoughts and use of the sacred word. And I've told you all this story about how I started off with a video course, and so I really did not understand what I was doing. For a couple of years, I didn't understand the difference between having a thought and engaging a thought. I thought it mattered how many times I had a thought. I was judging it like crazy, which is what caused a lot of my resistance. This went on for a couple of years. And I finally went to a retreat, and I started reading books, and we had the group, and I started to understand the difference between having a thought and engaging a thought, and I started to understand that judging it was completely counterproductive. And when see, I knew I'd have a blank spot. When I finally figured out the difference between having a thought and engaging a thought and realizing it really didn't even matter in the first place, that however many times you say your word doesn't make any difference. In fact, saying your word is a blessing rather than a failing, because you are chipping away at that wall between you and God. So once I figured this out, my resistance just fell away and I started making more progress. So guideline 3, when engaged with your thoughts, return ever so gently to the sacred word. Your sacred word expresses your consent to God's presence and action within. Here comes Leah. Hi. Come on in. Yeah, my phone just went off, so I'm interrupted anyway.
Oh,
So come on in.
Thank you.
Okay, so guideline 3, when engaged with your thoughts, return ever so gently to your sacred word. Your sacred word expresses your consent to God's presence and action within. It's our only action. We sit down to do centering prayer, and then we let go of everything, and God does the rest. We silently say our sacred word when thinking about thoughts or when engaged in interior dialogue. The best analogy that I have, the way I think of this, is like a movie theater. If you're sitting in a blank, just very dark movie theater, and you're aware of people talking around you, and the screen is blank. So you can't really see anything, and you can't really make out anything anybody is saying. That's kind of having thoughts. When you started engaging your thoughts, that's when you're listening and you're hearing your neighbor's conversation. Or you turn around and you tell the guy behind you to shut up. Or you start watching the movie. So having a thought, we can have a stream of thoughts that are just kind of going through our heads, but it's when we engage the thoughts, when we start thinking about our thoughts, that we've engaged them. And that would be the time when you become aware of that to say your sacred word and let it go. If you don't understand the difference, and sometimes you say the sacred word even if you just have a stream of thoughts, it doesn't matter, it's still okay. In centering prayer, both thoughts and silence have an important role to play. Some thoughts contain what needs to be healed. The silence creates a space for the healing to take place. It's really about accepting our thoughts and our feelings. We have these little wounded places that we've accumulated over our lifetime. And a lot of times in these wounded places, we get thoughts and feelings that come and just surround that hurt place like a crust. So you have, say for instance, somebody said something to you once that really hurt your feelings. Well, when these feelings come up, when you think of that memory, you don't feel your hurt. What you feel is the anger that you were feeling at the time. Oh, I can't believe that person said that to me. And we start going into these gyrations about, oh, this was just terrible, this person said, and this anger comes up to protect us from that hurt place. And one of the things that centering prayer, I think it does, is that when these thoughts come up and we let go of the anger and the resentment that's surrounding this hurt place, eventually we wear it down. We let go of them. We get used to letting go of these resentments and this anger. And then eventually we can feel that hurt. And then we can let that hurt go as well. Each return to your sacred word is a prayer and an act of love. So it's a blessing rather than a failing. Thoughts. Thoughts is an umbrella term for any perception at all, including body sensations, images, emotions, memories, reflections, concepts, commentaries, and spiritual experiences. Thoughts are an inevitable, integral, and normal part of centering prayer. This is the part that I did not understand, because I thought my mind was supposed to go blank. I thought everybody else's mind was blank except mine. But this is not the case. They are inevitable. The only way you're not going to have thoughts is if you're brain dead. They're going to come up. They are integral. They're integral because these thoughts, when they come up, the really strong ones, when we let them go, we're practicing letting go of these emotionally charged thoughts. And they're normal. This is what everybody experiences who does centering prayer. We have these thoughts, and what we're doing is we're trying to learn to let them go. Okay, kinds of thoughts. Ordinary wanderings of the imagination or the memories. So, what's for dinner? What's for dinner tonight? Thinking about things that you need to do today, things you need to do tomorrow, things you need to worry about, remembering conversations you had with somebody. These are just all the ordinary wanderings of the imagination that you're probably not even aware of because we're so busy during the day, but these things are popping into our head all the time. Attractions and aversions. These are really, for me, the toughest ones. These are the thoughts that I really want to think about. When I become aware that I'm thinking about them, it's really hard to say my sacred word because I think, well, I just need to finish thinking about this, and then I'll say my sacred word. But a good example of this would have been the time I told you about when I chewed out my sprinkler man, and then I went upstairs and tried to center. And I could not get this out of my head. I mean, I just kept going over and over in my mind what he said, and what I said, and what he said, and what I said. And every time it came up, I would say my sacred word and try and let it go, and then it would come up again. And I'd say my sacred word and let it go. And at the time that this happened, I thought, well, I might as well have just not even done my centering at all because that was just such a waste. But I don't look at it that way anymore because now the way I look at that was that it gave me a really good practice in letting go of this really rotten conversation I had with this guy and letting go of that anger and resentment I had towards him. Insights. I realized one time when I've been trying to figure out where I was going to get a particular hymn that I could learn how to play. And I was centering when it suddenly dawned on me I could go to Mardell's and buy a hymnal. But I didn't get up and write it down. I didn't even try and remember it, and I forgot about it. But the next morning, when I started going back and thinking again, how am I going to find this hymn to learn how to play it, I remembered what I had thought of in my centering prayer, and then I went to get it. So we don't have to worry. If you have a great idea while you're centering, it'll come back up. As soon as something reminds you of that, it'll come back up. You don't need to stop your prayer and write it down. Self-reflections. Suddenly realizing, I was really kind of rude to that guy. Maybe I should go back and apologize. Just let it go. It'll take care of itself. You can think about it later. Thoughts and feelings arising from the unconscious, hidden in the darkness. This is what they call unloading of the unconscious. And there's a lot of things that are buried down in our unconscious that just get hidden in the darkness. And a lot of it is not, we don't become aware of it because we're so busy during the day. I'm not sure that that's not part of the attraction of keeping busy. Is these things just we keep that door closed. We don't even want to think about those things. But sometimes these things will start coming up when you've been centering. I've had times when I just started crying. And the first time this happened, I thought, well, this prayer isn't going to work. I need to just get up. And I got up and I walked off because I thought it wasn't going to work today. And then I read in the book that Thomas Keating says that when this kind of thing happens, you just accept it. You just let it go. You don't try and stop it. You don't stop the prayer. You don't obsess about it. You don't think about it. You just let the feelings come and let them go. You just go ahead and experience them. When the Lord comes, He will bring to light, I can't read that from the screen. He will bring to light what is hidden in the darkness and will manifest the motives of our hearts. The 4 R's. Resist no thought, retain no thought, react emotionally to no thought, return ever so gently to the sacred word. So resist no thought. So this is like if you find yourself crying, if you find yourself in some kind of emotional turmoil that's come up on you, don't try and stop it. Just let it come. Retain no thought. So you don't have to try and remember that great idea you had. You can just let it go. It'll come back. React emotionally to no thought. One time I was centering and I realized I had the jitters from drinking too much coffee. So reacting emotionally to that was what I started to do when I started going, oh, I shouldn't have had so much coffee this morning. Now I'm jittering. So I was thinking about the fact I was jittering when all I really had to do was just be aware I was jittering and not worry about it, just let it go. Return ever so gently to the sacred word. We don't judge, we don't scold, we just let it go like a feather dropping on a cotton ball. Centering prayer is a method, not a technique. During this prayer, we avoid analyzing our experience, harboring expectations, aiming at some specific goal. A technique is a set of guidelines and procedures which are designed to give us a specific result. And in that way, centering prayer is not a technique, it's a method. We have absolutely no goals in centering prayer. There was a staff member at this last retreat that I went to who said that the monk who taught her centering prayer told her to sit down, get quiet, don't expect anything, and you're going to change. It is that simple, but the problem is that we're the ones who make it hard, because it is that simple. So things like repeating the sacred word continuously. The sacred word isn't a mantra, and when you do that, when you say the sacred word continuously, you're keeping your attention on the sacred word, and we're really trying to even let go of our attention. Having no thoughts or making the mind blank. This kind of thing happens. My mind, I do get to these blank spaces. The first time I got to a blank space, I went, oh my God, I'm not thinking. And it kind of scared me. And then I thought, oh, well, now I'm thinking. But I had to be thinking all the time, and it scared me that I wasn't thinking. But these blank places do come, but we just can't control them, we can't expect them. Feeling peaceful or consoled. Again, this is something that happens in centering prayer. We do feel peaceful and consoled, but this isn't something we can expect to have happen. When I was centering after I had that argument with my sprinkler man, it would have been pretty unreasonable to expect to come out of it peaceful and consoled. The best I could do that day was just to try the best I could to let go of my anger. Achieving a spiritual experience. When I was thinking about this today, the question that first came into my mind is, what is a spiritual experience? I mean, how can we even define what a spiritual experience is? One person's spiritual experience might not be the same as someone else's. We may be having spiritual experiences that we might not even consider to be spiritual, where God does. It really is a spiritual experience. So we can't expect these things to happen. We can't expect to have some vision of Jesus. We may get one, but we can't expect it. And I think a lot of the spiritual experiences we have are a lot more mundane than that. Generally, having expectations about the prayer experience is an attempt to control the relationship. Surrendering our illusion of control is the whole point of centering prayer. Deepening of faith. We do not judge our periods of centering prayer as good or bad by the psychological experience. This was exactly the reason why I was having so much trouble getting a regular practice going, because you don't want to do something if you know you're going to judge it badly. So it's really important to just let it go. And after I stopped judging it, and I mean I really stopped judging it, that was when I dived into it head first. And that was when I could really get a good experience going. Our experience in centering prayer is not dependent to the felt presence of God, but is rather a deepening of faith in God's abiding presence. And again, what's a felt presence of God? If we have an expectation about what a felt presence is, what if it's something else and we just don't know? And that's why we can't have any expectations, because we can't know God. And God works in us in ways that we can't judge, that we can't even be aware of. This is a prayer beyond words or feelings. We have no judgments, no demands, and no expectations. In summary, consent to God's presence and action is the heart and soul of centering prayer practice. This is the only action we take, and we're saying yes to God as opposed to not saying no. When engaged with your thoughts, return ever so gently to the sacred word. So if we say it 1,000 times, that's 1,000 blessings. Once you grasp the fact that thoughts are not only inevitable but an integral part of the process of healing and growth initiated by God, you will be able to take a friendlier attitude towards them. Now, when I find that I'm engaging my thoughts in centering prayer, I try and cut it off mid-word if I can. I just cut it off. I don't even finish the sentence. Progress in centering prayer does not eliminate thoughts, but leads to detachment from all thoughts. And this is a practice in detaching from our thoughts. Thoughts do not interrupt this prayer unless you deliberately engage them. As we establish the centering prayer practice, we let the thoughts come and we let the thoughts go. On the sacred word, this is a quote out of Open Mind, Open Heart, the new edition, on page 33. Let's see if I can find it again. It was in a different spot. Here it is. The sacred word is a way of letting go of all thoughts. This makes it possible for our spiritual faculties, which are attracted to interior silence, to move spontaneously in that direction. Such a movement does not require effort. It only requires the willingness to let go of our ordinary preoccupations. For any of you who've ever gone to a 12-step program, that's all they ever tell you have to bring. That's all you're required of, is to bring willingness into the program. And that's all centering prayer asks of you either. So we can go on and do our centering prayer.